Hello there! I thought it was about time I did a slightly different video. In the past I have done videos about series with writers in them and also films that either have writing or depict the life of a writer in them. I will link both of those down below. They're films that I really enjoy making because as a writer myself I love to watch things about writers or revolving around writers or with writers in them. So I will, as I say, link both of those below, but I thought what I would do today is kind of a hybrid of those videos and talk about all the things on Netflix at the moment which I think writers would enjoy. Now there are probably going to be some crossovers in here. There's definitely two from the series video, but anyway, I wanted to include them here, and I think it's quite interesting to talk about things on Netflix because most people do now have a Netflix subscription, so these shouldn't be things that you need to rush out and buy. Hopefully you've already got access to them, but maybe you don't realise that they're on there because actually Netflix is pretty good for stuff about writers. It has quite a lot on there most of the time. So let's get straight into it. I have a variety of things. I've got documentaries, I've got series, I've got films. So let's get going with these series. I'm going to start with one that's slightly out there, and that is You. This is a series adaptation of You, the novel by Caroline Kepnes, and it basically looks at a guy who is stalking a girl, but the girl that he is stalking is a writer, and it kind of looks at how she struggles with writing, how she's trying to get her career going. So even though writing is not the central feature of this by any means, there are some interesting things about writing in there. It looks at her struggle to kind of find her voice. It looks at how she keeps repeating the same things over and over in her writing. I think she's predominantly a poet, if I recall rightly. And it also looks at her struggle to kind of make connections in the industry. So there is plenty of interest in there for writers. Then I'm going to move on to Jane the Virgin. Again, writing is not the central theme of this series. This is about a woman who is accidentally artificially inseminated when she is a virgin. But Jane herself is a writer, and there is a lot in this series about writing, and I think there is a lot of really interesting and useful things for writers in there. So yes, Jane's writing is a sideline, but we look at things like how she struggles to continue with her writing after she has her child, how she traverses studying writing at college. She also goes on to get a book deal, and we look at how she tries to deal with building a relationship with her editor, all sorts of things. Oh, and there's also a lot in here about Jane getting writer's block or going to a writing group to try and unblock herself and things like that. It's got a lot, as I say, it's got a lot of real nods for writers. There's also an episode in this series where Jane is having her book launch and Isabella Allende actually turns up. So there is a lot in here. I think it's kind of written with writers in mind, this series, and it's fantastic. I would highly recommend. Then the last series I've got to talk to you about is Californication. Now this is a very dirty series. Again, writing isn't probably the central theme in this. This follows a writer called Hank Moody who has had kind of a genius first novel. You know, it's one of those books that's considered a classic, and it basically looks at his struggle to try and live up to that standard that he set for himself with his first novel. It's really dirty, as I say. Hank Moody is a bit of a sex addict, should we say, so there is a lot of filth in here. If you don't like that, then this probably isn't for you, but I think there's plenty in here, again, that writers could enjoy, and I think if you're blocked and you're struggling to kind of live up to stuff that you've written before, this would be fantastic for you. Then I'm on to the films, which I only have two of. So there's Stranger Than Fiction is on there at the moment. This is a really good film starring Will Ferrell, I think he's called. And it basically looks at a man who starts to hear somebody narrating everything that he does. And it turns out that he is a character in a woman's novel who has kind of just appeared in life. And she has yet to finish the novel. So he basically goes on a mission to find her, to ask her not to do anything bad to him. But does it go well for him? We shall see. It's really good, it's really funny, and I think it's a really interesting look at storytelling and building narrative and what makes a good story and what makes a good story ending, and it's just so good. I would really recommend. And then Mary Shelley is on there at the moment as well. This is the best thing I've watched on Netflix in a very long time. My mum actually told me about this. I didn't realise it. It's not overly been advertised on there. I don't think, I haven't seen it advertised that much. This is basically a film retelling of Mary Shelley's life. So her when she is a young girl working in her father's bookshop, and she then meets the love of her life, who's this famous poet, and she runs off with him, and it basically looks at the struggles that ensue and how she came to write Frankenstein. And it's really interesting actually. I didn't realise, for example, that I think her husband kind of took the credit for Frankenstein originally, or at least the publishers were trying to make it look like he had written it. And yeah, it's a really interesting look at female authors and the struggles, I suppose, that female authors have gone through in the past. There are plenty of films out there like that, but this is definitely one of the best that I've seen. Then the final one I've got to speak to you about is Joan Didion, The Centre Will Not Hold. Now this is a documentary and it looks at Joan Didion's life and her writing and the things that she's gone through and how that has shaped the things that she writes. Obviously this is a bit different because Joan Didion is a non-fiction writer, but this is really, really interesting anyway. I always find documentaries about authors fascinating, especially somebody like Joan Didion who has lived such a life. I won't lie, this is a very sad documentary because obviously Joan Didion's life has been pretty tragic at times, and I don't think you can ever really get over that. But it just looks at her life on the whole, and obviously the death of her husband and her daughter as well. And yeah, I would really recommend this. I was a bit sad actually because there used to be a documentary about Charles Bukowski on Netflix as well, which I wanted to talk to you about, but it's not there anymore. But, you know, that's Netflix. I think it's possible that these things won't stay on there for very long. Certainly Jane the Virgin and Californication are going to be on there for a while. They've been on there for years, and You is probably going to stick around. I find that the series do, but if you want to watch the films and the documentary, I would recommend getting to that soon because there's no guarantee that it's going to stick around, especially Stranger Than Fiction. I can imagine is going to disappear off that screen pretty sharpish. But anyway, I hope you enjoy. Please let me know down below if there's anything else that you've noticed on Netflix that is really good for writers, and I will see you next time. Bye.